Scandal in Formula One. Lewis Hamilton breaks the silence and attacks the FIA like never before after the chaotic 2025 Mexican Grand Prix. Are we facing a scandalous double standard? An unfair penalty that keeps him from the podium with Ferrari? Stay, because we tell you everything the FIA does not want you to know. The 10-second penalty imposed on him for supposedly obtaining an advantage off the track not only removed him from the podium, it left him exposed to an institutional contradiction of the FIA. And his reaction was not that of a driver who lost a race, but that of a historical figure in motorsports who feels that the integrity of the sport is at stake. Frustration had been building for some time. Inconsistent decisions, similar maneuvers by other drivers that were not sanctioned, and the feeling that his name was no longer treated with the same respect. Hamilton also made it clear on the radio. He repeatedly asked why other drivers who cut corners were not being investigated. He even directly mentioned Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc, accusing them of doing the same without receiving any penalty. The disbelief was not just sporting, it was emotional. It was personal. And if anyone expected a political or restrained reaction from the British, they were wrong. This time there was no diplomacy. There was a direct, frontal accusation against the institution that governs the sport. This was not a simple, "I feel frustrated." It was a message to the world, "I'm tired of the double standard. I'm tired of being treated differently." A media bomb that not only marked his relationship with the FIA, but has called into question the credibility of the Formula One penalty system as a whole. The 2025 Mexican Grand Prix began with palpable tension from the formation on the grid. The first three starting places promised a fierce battle. Lando Norris on pole, Charles Leclerc in second, and Lewis Hamilton in third. Just behind, Max Verstappen, always willing to force extreme situations from the start. The first corner, one of the most complicated on the calendar, became the epicenter of a perfect storm. The start was clean, but that didn't last more than 5 seconds. When the four cars arrived parallel to the first stop, the track simply did not offer enough space. It was there that the race stopped being tactical and became a chaos of individual decisions. Max Verstappen, as usual, tried an extremely aggressive outside line. He didn't brake enough, lost control over the curbs, and ended up completely cutting turns 1, 2, and 3, using the grass as a shortcut. Not only did he avoid losing positions, he rejoined later without having negotiated any curve of the first sector. Charles Leclerc did something similar. He cut the chicane decisively, although in his case he did return the position to Norris, but he maintained the advantage over Hamilton. And this detail is key because Hamilton did draw the curve correctly at that moment, losing inertia compared to those who chose to go to the outside. What was surprising was not the chaos. That's common on outings. What ignited the controversy was the response of the commissioners. No sanction. They classified it as a racing incident. The signal sent was clear. If on the first lap you cut the track to avoid traffic, it can be tolerated. But that apparent tolerance was broken just a few laps later. On lap 6, Hamilton and Verstappen engaged in a direct battle. Max tried to pass on the inside in turn 1, he pushed him to the outside and there was contact. From there, the tension between the two rose. In turn 4, Hamilton pushed to the limit, locked the brakes, lost traction and went off the track. Not by decision. Not for tactical advantage. It was a direct consequence of the extreme environment, high altitude, overheated brakes and no downforce. The result, Hamilton crossed the grass and returned to the track ahead of Verstappen. An inevitable move from a technical point of view, but one that would be sanctioned minutes later with a 10-second penalty. And this is where the scandal is born. Because while other drivers gained an advantage by cutting the track voluntarily, without consequences, Hamilton was penalized for an error induced by extreme physical conditions. The perception was consolidated in seconds. The criterion was not the same for everyone. This moment marked the before and after of the Grand Prix. What seemed like another intense battle between two giants of Formula One became an open accusation against the structure that supposedly guarantees fairness in the competition. In any sport, the consistency of the rules is what sustains justice. In Formula One, where milliseconds define races and millions of dollars are at stake, that consistency is not optional. It is an obligation. But what happened in Mexico 2025 with the International Automobile Federation revealed a contradiction that goes beyond the technical. It is a fracture in the very logic of the competition. Following the incident between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen on lap 6, the FIA issued two official documents almost at the same time. One of them, document 37, was a kind of confession. In it, the stewards admitted that Hamilton had had a fully justifiable reason for not following the escape route marked by the race director. According to his own analysis, Hamilton's car was traveling too fast due to a complete brake lock, caused by the extreme altitude of the Mexico circuit. In other words, Hamilton did not have enough physical control of the car to turn and take the correct escape route. What he did was not a choice. It was a reaction forced by the technical and environmental conditions. But the problem arose when, at the same time, Document 36 was published. This other report said exactly the opposite in practical terms. It imposed a 10-second penalty on Hamilton for having obtained a durable advantage by going out of track limits. That is, the same FIA that claimed that the driver acted in good faith and without alternative, sanctioned him for not having returned the position. Without considering context, without nuances, the contradiction is not only technical, it's philosophical. Because what is punished here is not an intentional violation, but an inevitable consequence of an adverse environment. It's like punishing a driver for not braking in time, in a car without brakes. This double narrative from the FIA has generated a level of mistrust rarely seen. And the most serious thing is that it is not an ambiguous interpretation of the regulations. These are two official documents, signed by the same body of commissioners, which mutually deny. One says the pilot had no choice. The other says he should have acted as if he had it. At the center of this storm is Lewis Hamilton, penalized in a situation where even telemetry data exonerates him. And that is the root of his fury. It's not just that he has been punished. It's that he was punished after the sport's own referees admitted that he couldn't have done anything differently. That contradiction exposes something much deeper. Because when a regulatory body contradicts itself in real time, it loses authority, loses confidence. And in a sport where precision is everything, losing confidence in the referee system is losing the soul of the competition. Ferrari was quick to respond, and he did it bluntly. For a team accustomed to dealing with media pressure, the internal politics of Formula One and the constant comparison with its rivals, what happened at Mexico 2025 was simply unacceptable. This time it was not about strategic errors or mechanical failures. This time, in his words, the result of the race was altered by an external decision. For a penalty that they consider not only unfair, but devastating for the team's result. Fred Vasseur, director of the Ferrari team, was the one who showed his face in the subsequent conference. And his statements were as direct as they were calculated. There was no shouting, there was no scandal, but there was a very clear message. This penalty cost us P4. I don't remember when someone received 10 seconds for something like that. What Vasseur denounces here is not simply the severity of the punishment. It is disproportionality. Because a 10-second penalty on a circuit like the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, where overtaking is extremely difficult due to the altitude, the lack of grip and the poor effectiveness of the DRS, is not a common sanction. It is a sentence. Just a look at the final classification to see that those 10 seconds not only kept Hamilton from the podium, they threw him into traffic. They disconnected him from the leaders and left him without a chance for redemption. For Vasseur, if the penalty had been 5 seconds, they would still have finished fourth. But with 10 there was no margin. And this is where Ferrari introduces a key argument into the overall narrative of this scandal. Vasseur directly compares Hamilton's case with that of Max Verstappen and Charles Leclerc. They both completely missed the first chicane. Both gained positions. No one was penalized. Why then did they penalize only Hamilton? That is the question that the team throws into the air, and that no one in the FIA has answered convincingly. Vasseur went even further by criticizing the way the race was managed in general. He said the start was poorly handled by the stewards, that there was no adequate response to the chaos of the first round, and that decisions were made arbitrarily. He did not limit himself to defending his pilot. He questioned the decision-making structure. He put the very functioning of the sport's regulatory system under the magnifying glass. What happened at the Mexican Grand Prix did not stay within the walls of Ferrari or in Lewis Hamilton's cockpit. The controversy went through the paddock like a shock wave. Because when the FIA contradicts itself, when penalties are applied with criteria that seem to change from driver to driver, the silence is broken. And what was heard in Mexico was a cascade of criticism from some of the most respected names in the sport. Fernando Alonso, two-time world champion, did not hold his tongue. He said clearly that several cars took the first corner straight, jumped chicanes and then returned to the track with an advantage. And he stated something even more serious, that this was the second consecutive time that the FIA looked the other way during the first lap. Alonso, who has been a witness and protagonist of decades of controversial decisions, does not speak without measuring the weight of his words. And what he reported was a pattern. Not an isolated error. In other subsequent statements, he revealed the real impact. I will keep trying. I will get up tomorrow and train. I can't let those who are not being useful stop me. It's not a complaint. It's an internal scream. He is an injured pilot who is not questioning his talent or effort, but rather the system that should ensure that talent and effort are fairly measured. And there's something even starker. With just 4 races left in the season, time is running out to change this narrative. Every Grand Prix that passes without a podium is a lost opportunity. And in a team like Ferrari, where the weight of history is as great as the demand for results, that pressure is multiplied. For Hamilton, the Mexican Grand Prix was not just another race. It was the moment his season crossed an emotional line. It was the point where he stopped expecting justice and started asking for it. Lewis Hamilton, one of the most successful drivers in the history of the sport, was penalized in a situation in which even the FIA documents themselves recognized that he did not have full control over his car. He was sanctioned for an action he did not choose in an extreme context, while other pilots committed similar infractions without receiving consequences. And all of this was backed by data, telemetry, and verifiable facts. So now I ask you directly, do you think Hamilton's penalty was fair? Are we seeing a pattern of inconsistency in FIA decisions? Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.